She was a mother, a daughter, a fighter. On May 10th, 2021, Bryanna Rosendo liked a single post on Facebook, and then she was gone. No calls, no texts, no trace. What happened to Bryanna in the streets of Pennsylvania and Baltimore is a story of a system that failed her, a predator who may have targeted her, and a family that never stopped looking. Now, we're looking too.
All right, so what we're looking at here is a piece of software that I developed called Nexus Investigative Intelligence, and it allows us to take all of the data and intelligence at scale and visualize it. We can ask questions around it using AI. We can see the different data links, and we can do a lot of other really powerful things with it. So we're going to actually click on Bryanna Rosendo's public profile. The reason why we're going to show you public is because some of the information that we necessarily don't want to show public will be redacted. So when I open the investigation here, you can see all of the data nodes immediately pop into place. Each one of these data nodes is basically a piece of intelligence that has been gathered so far in the process. This is really important because when you think about intelligence and investigations, this is perhaps one of the biggest challenges and causes the most failure, is being able to pull all of the data and information in from all sources, from all different locations, all over the place, into one clean view to see how everything is linked together. So we're going to take a look at this here in just a moment. But I do want to show you some other, powerful things that we have put in place, within Nexus. One of those is if I click up here on the intelligence tab, you can see here that I can ask Nexus agent questions. This is actually really important and extremely useful because you got to think right now, I am a single human, a single brain trying to interpret this data. What you're looking at, the nodes that you were just looking at, that's only the preliminary information that's been gathered so far. When we release our system, which is global search, to go out and perform enhanced intelligence gathering, in some cases, it pulls back thousands upon thousands of data points. And I'm telling you right now, a single person or a team of people cannot analyze all of that data. They're going to miss something, right? It's human error. So Nexus Agent is designed to prevent that error, right? You got to think that the computational analysis and overall compute capacity, it's equivalent to probably thousands upon thousands of people. This is in turn also connected to supercompute capabilities that allows us to do very powerful things. We can also view, the timeline. We can look at the case report and sort of see everything in a high level view. We can print out a report of that. But, really this framework mapping is perhaps, the most important feature that we have. We can also expand it, right? So you can see here, once I click on the expand button, we can actually bring this into view a little bit better. And you can see how all of the data nodes are connected. As data nodes, as those connections grow, the node itself is going to actually grow in size. So you see the node in the middle, that's actually Bryanna's node, right? So, most everything here is connected to Bryanna because she is the missing person. If we come out of this, we can actually see over here to the right, the current node that we have selected and all of the different connections that are in place, right? So for example, with Bryanna, we have 25 links. Now I want to sort of walk through some of this, right? Maybe there's somebody out there listening or watching and you see this information and, maybe you have a recommendation, you have feedback, maybe even you have some information that you can share with us that could help find Bryanna. So taking a look here, what we know is that Bryanna had met a male who we've identified, our system has identified that male as unsub male companion. It's been communicated that she met this male on a dating app, and we can see that dating app link connection there as well. We can also see that we've been able to gather intelligence that that particular male, whose identity remains unknown, has been referenced to the Kensington corridor which is a high human and sex trafficking location. We also have a few different phone numbers associated to Bryanna. So we can see those listed here. I'll highlight the first. Now, these phone numbers can either be directly used by Bryanna, maybe they were phone numbers that she actually owned, or at some point she had become linked to that phone number. The first one, the phone number ends in 7353, and the second one ends in 5792. We also have some Facebook accounts. We have some emails, so we have a lot of communications gathered just on preliminary sweep alone. And that's important because our system is then going to be able to go out and perform enhanced searches around each of those phone numbers, each of the emails, each of the IPs, and any data links that it finds related to those. It's going to take that back to square one and perform a search all over again. And this is going to happen over and over and over again, millions of times, right? So all of the data is then pulled into Nexus so we can visualize that and see how it's all mapped together. This is probably one of the most, if I had to sit here today and say, by looking at this data, what is the most important node? It's going to be this Baltimore sighting, right? So we also have the black Kia Optima that is linked to this Baltimore sighting. If you recall, a witness had said that they saw Bryanna being pulled into a black Kia Optima in Baltimore. We also have the Kia Optima individuals who remain unknown at this time. But, we really want to show a lot of focus to this black Kia Optima. So if you live or you've traveled to the Baltimore area, especially around the January 2022 timeframe, and maybe you have an experience or a memory that maybe was unusual involving a black Kia Optima, please share that information with us. You can do so by navigating over to the findmeproject.com, our website, and you can submit that tip and remain anonymous. You can also submit it to the Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers line, as well as the Wilkes-Barre Police Department. A few other things to call out here. Again, we have another phone number you can actually see here linked, ending in 4720. We have a few different addresses actually in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. First one, 732 North Washington Street. Second one, 745 North Washington Street. Both of those obviously on the same street there. Again, this is preliminary information. We're honestly looking at this in live time with you. So, we don't know if maybe that's where Bryanna was staying, but what we can tell you is she was linked to those locations. We also have one here in, I believe the city, town, village is called Exeter, Pennsylvania, 48 Mount Lookout Trail. That's another one that there's a possible link to. Much like Baltimore, we see references to Southwest Baltimore. Those actually come in the form of witness statements where people have claimed to have seen Bryanna in the Southwest Baltimore area. We have the male friend that she was staying with when she had met the male companion who is the unsub on the dating app. We also have some additional associates, friends, families that have been identified. We're not going to go into detail, with all of those right now. Much like the Baltimore sighting with the black Kia Optima, there's another key node that I want to actually call out here, and this is a Wilkes-Barre Lodge. And you can see tied to this node is also a linked node titled Lodge Drug Raid. So this is actually important because just prior or around the time of meeting the unsub on a dating app, it was said or communicated that Bryanna was living at the Lodge, which is a high crime, drug, and human and sex trafficking location in that area. Just basically from the information we have here, let's see if I can get this right. Bryanna leaves the lodge. She's no longer staying there. And then shortly thereafter, or the next month, she goes missing or she disappears from various accounts, right? So that Wilkes-Barre Lodge, if you stayed there, if you were in the area and you have any information at all, please share that with us. It can certainly help. Let's see. We have the Kids for Cash nodes. We've already talked about that. A few trafficking investigations where Bryanna's name has popped up. Now, this is another one that we're going to actually want to take a look at and see if our system can identify. From what we've been able to gather so far, Bryanna had she did actually contact, I believe, her ex-husband from a unknown person's phone. And I believe this may have been a Georgia area code. So, that's quite unique, right? And this was actually going to be, this is around the time where she would have, gone missing. So that's important information that we're really going to want to pay very close attention to and see if we can gather any additional information around that. Another good one here to drive awareness to is an alias or street name that Bryanna went by, and that's Destiny X. Destiny X in itself really appears to be a professional street name that could have been used in sex work. We do know that Bryanna had a past relationship with sex work, but this is actually really important to call out. We're not going to share the full details of this just yet because we are still validating some of this. But our Guardian Angel Task Force, which is our team that gathers open source intelligence to help find missing people, actually began to take this preliminary information that you're seeing here in Nexus and cross-reference it against any of our known human and sex trafficking databases. And that actually resulted in negative findings, right? We did not find anything in those databases related to Bryanna. It is worth calling out, though, that the data that we are searching against is obviously Bryanna's. And if she was introduced into human or sex trafficking, it's not that common or really likely at all that you're going to see the victim's name and information posted on these, sex trafficking platforms, which then make their way into our database. What our team did find, though, was on one of the platforms or locations that is known to foster human and sex trafficking, we found a profile and an image. It's a partial image that could very well be Bryanna. It's really hard to tell. When we actually ran that photo through our facial recognition software, we got a probability of around 50%. And that's not, that's sort of expected, right? Because, we only have half of the person's face, and it does seem that this person is a little younger than some of the most current photos of Bryanna that were shared as part of the missing person investigation. But what I do want to call out is when we actually took multiple photos of Bryanna over a period of several years, because of her drug dependency and just how much drugs can actually impact your physical look, our facial recognition software also gave the result of 50% on known photos of Bryanna. Now, when we quantified and enhanced that a little bit more, that probability obviously grew. But at face value, that's why we don't want to dismiss this finding that our team came across. And perhaps one of the most important callouts that I want to make is with the username or alias of this profile on the platform. Remember, Bryanna had an alias or street name of Destiny X. Well, what we found with this profile that we located is that the alias in use was Destiny 69DD. Is that a coincidence? I don't know, right? Some of the characteristics that we would expect to see within this photo don't necessarily match Bryanna to a T. It is possible that they were photoshopped out to try to hide identity, or it could just be a younger, younger version of Bryanna, or it may not be her at all. All right, so what I want to talk about now is the timeline for Bryanna's missing person case. And this timeline and information is also available on our website, which is thefindmeproject.com. You can also find lots of other information that's related to Bryanna's missing person case. We actually begin by going back to February and March of 2021. This was Bryanna's last confirmed period of stability. At the time, Bryanna was living at the Wilkes-Barre Lodge in regular contact with friends and family. Her behavioral baseline was normal. Now, in late April of 2021, we have our first red flag titled The Man on the App. A drug raid hits the lodge. Bryanna relocates to a male friend's home with an unidentified male she met via a dating app. What our behavioral and forensic profilers have identified is this is accelerated cohabitation and is the first behavioral flag. This actually represents a critical node that you saw in Nexus, which is titled unsub. And at this point, as far as we're concerned, they really are the primary person of interest. Now, also at the end of April 2021, we have a red flag titled The Borrowed Phone. Bryanna calls her ex-husband from a Georgia area code, but tells him she is not in Georgia and that she borrowed the phone. Again, our profilers have identified that this is communication control. It's also counter-surveillance in an early control pattern. May 1st, 2021, red flag. This is the official date of last contact. The male friend states Bryanna and the companion depart for Baltimore. His account will later be contradicted by multiple witnesses. May 10th, 2021, red flag, the last digital footprint. Bryanna likes a single Facebook post. Every account then goes permanently silent. Total communication blackout. Now, what we don't know is if that was actually Bryanna on Facebook liking that post, or if it was somebody else who had access to her social media account. Right now, we don't know, but we're hoping our system can help identify that. July 2021, red flag, the phone transfer. A family member actually calls Bryanna's cell phone number. An unknown woman answers and says that she's had the phone for a couple of months. Phone transfer is a documented counter-surveillance technique. Also in July 2021, we have a timeline event titled Southwest Baltimore, last confirmed location. It's actually been referenced on a different platform known as the Doe Network. The records indicate that Bryanna was last seen in Southwest Baltimore within the area of Route 40, Security Boulevard, in Curtis Bay Corridor. This is a documented trafficking hot zone. Now, around July and December of 2021, we have contradicting sightings. Separate witnesses report seeing Bryanna at the male friend's Wilkes-Barre residence, directly contradicting his account of her departure. And then the final red flag comes in January of 2022, an event, and I think this is, again, probably one of the more important ones, titled Pulled into a Car. A witness reports seeing Bryanna in Baltimore being physically pulled into a black Kia Optima by unidentified individuals. This is the most recent confirmed sighting. Forced entry, black Kia Optima. That's Bryanna's timeline. If you have any information that can help us out at all, please reach out to us.
A mission with purpose to find the missing using the power of social networking and cutting-edge technology. We're military veterans, technologists, scuba divers, and relentless seekers. From deep forests to sunken vehicles, from silence to signal, every clue matters. If you've ever felt the call to stand for something greater, this is your moment. This is the Find Me Project.
There are cases that haunt you, not because of their violence, not because of their mystery alone, but because of who was failed and how completely they were failed. The disappearance of Bryanna Lynn Rosendo is one of those cases. A woman, by every behavioral indicator we can measure, did not walk away from her life. A woman whose family begged for help. A woman whose case was assigned a number, filed in a drawer, and largely left there while she was last seen being pulled into a car on the streets of Baltimore. Bryanna Lynn Rosendo was born on January 11, 1986 in northeastern Pennsylvania. When Bryanna was 12 years old, she was swept into one of the most appalling judicial corruption scandals in American history, the Kids for Cash scandal, in which Luzerne County judges accepted millions in kickbacks to sentence juveniles with minor infractions to harsh time in private detention facilities, claiming thousands of victims between 2003 and 2008. Bryanna was one of them. She spent approximately 4 years in that detention facility during some of the most critical developmental windows of her life. Now, the research on early institutional trauma is unambiguous. It disrupts attachment formation. It fractures trust and authority. It derails education. It compounds across an entire lifetime. The system manufactured her exposure. She dropped out of school. She struggled with substance use. She lost parental rights to her first son. But Bryanna was not defined by her lowest moments. She got sober. She married. She had a second son. During every period of sobriety, by every account from family and friends, she was a devoted, fierce, loving mother. Now, in behavioral analysis, anchor behaviors are the things a person does consistently, across years, across adversity. For Bryanna, there were two. She never went more than a couple of months without calling her children. And she was active across multiple Facebook accounts with over 1,000 connections. These behaviors held through active addiction, through incarceration, through homelessness for decades. But they stopped on May 10th, 2021. Both of them, simultaneously and permanently. This is not the profile of a voluntary departure. This is a profile of someone whose access to communication was severed deliberately. The permanent and simultaneous cessation of both anchor behaviors on the same date is not consistent with a voluntary decision. It is, however, consistent with loss of device access, external control of communications, or physical incapacitation. The behavioral evidence does not support voluntary departure. It does not support suicide. There are no farewell communications, no recovered remains, and multiple post-disappearance sightings. It is consistent in every measurable dimension with organized recruitment and ongoing controlled captivity. This assessment is shared by law enforcement and Bryanna's family. It means that Bryanna may still be alive. Now, when we run a trafficking vulnerability assessment against Bryanna's profile, every major indicator is present. Not one or two, every single one. We have chronic housing instability and homelessness. That is commonly used as a vulnerability that's exploited by trafficker recruiters. We have active or recent substance use. That's used to induce and maintain dependency. We have prior involvement in sex work. That creates existing familiarity exploited as a recruitment entry point. We have high social media visibility, created as an accessible intelligence profile for predators. Introduction of an unknown male companion via a dating app immediately before her disappearance. That's documented through the Romeo Pimp recruitment methodology. And we have accelerated cohabitation within days of first contact, which is deliberate compression of the trust timeline. And we see communications devices not in her possession in the days before her disappearance. We see that through her primary cell phone transferred to a third party within weeks, and documented counter surveillance action. Total and permanent cessation of all social media activity inconsistent with voluntary departure. We also see suspected movement across state lines from Pennsylvania to Maryland. That corridor is known as a high trafficking area in the Northeast area. And then we have her name surfacing in active human trafficking investigations professional aliases such as Destiny X and a few others that we've seen through our intelligence gathering process so far. Now let's talk about this unknown male, the unsub. He has no name in public record. He appeared in Bryanna's life via a dating application in late April of 2021. Within days, he was living in the same house. Within weeks, she was gone. He is a central unresolved node in this entire case. The use of a digital platform for recruitment, the accelerated cohabitation, the phone transfer within weeks, these are learned behaviors. They reflect prior operational knowledge. He knew what he was doing before he ever met Bryanna. He operates along the I-95 Northeast corridor, Wilkes-Barre to Philadelphia to Baltimore. This is a documented trafficking artery. He did not discover these cities. He works them. The presence of other women in multiple witness sightings is consistent with an operator managing multiple victims at once. This is not an isolated crime. This is an operation. So a question that I keep asking myself is, how can we best use communications and PR to drive visibility and awareness for Bryanna's case? After all, when you look at how information is being released to the public and what that information actually is, it's not that beneficial, right? There may be somebody out there that has a piece of information that is actually extremely important, yet they don't realize that what they have could make or break the case. Maybe somebody out there saw something, and by providing that over to investigators, intelligence professionals, our team, we can use that piece of the puzzle, fit it together, and we start to see that big picture. So, when I think about how we can best use communications, especially from a local, state, or national level, I thought it would be best to bring in one of the best experts that I know of in communications, PR, and marketing strategy to give me some insight. So let me turn it over now to Michael Ashford.
Could we ask ourselves the question, what could I be missing? And then could we ask another question, another truly curious question that to kind of uncover what might this person be feeling in this moment that they might be hesitant to give all that they know? What could I be missing in terms of the information that I'm putting out to the public and why perhaps it's not resonating? Mark, one of the questions that I have in as I was thinking about missing persons and how communication can come in here is, I've always had the question, does it behoove the investigation, does it behoove the process to have the family member, like we've seen with the Melissa Guthrie case that's national right now, does it behoove the case in the investigation to have the family on camera, public, asking and pleading for information? I don't know. There's a perspective. That's a question that I have in my head. Has that ever been, not ever, but is that more often than not a benefit to the investigation? Or is that, I'm going to say it this way, and I don't mean it to come off this way, is that performative? Is it just simply making people feel good that they're doing something, in particular the family? I question whether that versus having a one person spokesperson deliver messages, deliver important information in a way that has been carefully crafted and considered, if that might be more helpful. What could I be missing in the information or the stuff that I'm putting out there to the public? I mentioned it earlier that I was thinking about this. In a lot of missing person cases, especially human trafficking, where a lot of people in that world are, perhaps like the case you sent me, previous drug addicts or got into some tough times in their life. You are now having to overcome some heavy biases in the eyes of the public about who that person is. We live in a very victim blaming society when we think that the person did it to themselves. My wife used to be before we had our second child, she was an an advocate and case manager for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And there is a very deep internalized victim blaming culture that we have around the people who survive those situations. Well, why didn't they just leave? Why didn't I would never do that. I would never keep my kids in that situation. What could I be missing? In so many of these, if we just ask ourselves those questions in so many of these scenarios and cases, I wonder, I'm curious, would that